Okay, so who are the people of Alcyone and Merope? How did it all start off? Remember, we've just emerged from the last ice age where we had 100,000 years and more of being hunter-gatherers. See the earlier videos for info about that, and just living through that cold, living in caves, etc. And we've emerged, and the weather's gotten warmer, and now we are able to form some settlements. And just at first, these are just rudimentary little groupings and gatherings of people, all with a common interest to survive, obviously, and to be able to put down some roots and be able to live rather than just traveling. And so the first settlements would have been very rudimentary, very much just huts and little villages and things like that. But when you think of village, it's not like a village with beautiful fireplaces. They would have been some very hunter-gatherer kind of installations they had going at that point. So, but then they grew. They knew they needed security, not just from animals, but from other people. And so they grew. Security happens in numbers as well. So they grew in numbers. They grew to greater, bigger things that we wouldn't really consider towns, but they would have considered towns if they had such a word. So here, all throughout Merope and across in Alcyone, villages started to form. They're not all on this map. There's most of them aren't on this map, because at first they were just little towns, little villages that became bigger settlements, and a lot of them would have joined together to become larger settlements, as I said, instead of just being separate, isolated little groupings and gatherings. And so Merope began to grow, and up in the north, where the weather was nicest, they had Titus begin to be formed. But at this point, it wasn't yet Titus. It was still, at first, the city of Titus was just a larger village, and it would have been just small huts and things like that. But it grew and grew as they realized that now they had more than just a grouping of towns and grouping of villages. They had what becomes the first nation state in the world. They give themselves a name. They name this country from here at the top in the north down to the bottom. They name it Merope. It's the first nation state on the planet Earth after the Ice Age. We're talking about 9800 BCE at this point. At the same time in Alcyone, there's much less people living over there, but they also formed their first nation state. Up in the north, the city of Taygete, much like Titus, has been formed by villages coming together to coalesce into something larger, and Taygete is formed. But all throughout all of Alcyone are other smaller villages. But strangely enough, at this time over in Merope, there were not just Meropans, but there down in the south were a different group of people who didn't identify as Meropans. Now there's more to come about this in other videos, but this led to the first great battle of all of mankind. As I said, more in another video about that. But at that time, Merope gets formed, Alcyone gets formed, and then when Merope realizes, after the battle that happened in the south of Merope around 9800 BCE, when Merope realizes that now the nation of Alcyone is forming, and that the people who escaped from that battle in the south of Merope are now adding to the population of Alcyone, and they are becoming Alcyonians. When the Meropans become aware of the nation of Alcyone forming across the Asman mountain range, which bisects the two nations, when they become aware of them and the Alcyonians become aware of the Meropans, they don't immediately go to war, but that's when they become aware of one another and interact with one another, and things start to get interesting at the clash of these two cultures, and they begin to work out, well, what do we do about one another? The Meropans, well, I guess they just decide that fact based on their philosophy, and the Alcyonians based on their philosophy, and that's where things start to get interesting between the two nations.